The diplomatic disaster, the crystal corridors of Harmony Point. Station gleamed under artificial starlight as delegates from 47 species gathered for the annual Galactic Commerce Alliance Summit. Ambassador Alina Rodriguez adjusted her simple blue uniform, feeling distinctly out of place among the flowing robes and bioluminescent displays of the other representatives. At 35, she was young for a human diplomat, but her sharp mind and unwavering determination had earned her this crucial assignment. For the past 5 years, humanity had been knocking on the door of full alliance membership. They had proven their worth in mining operations, colonial expansion, and technological innovation. Yet something always held the established powers back from accepting Earth as an equal partner. Alina knew what that something was. Fear. The conference hall buzzed with nervous energy as High Chancellor Zixthera of the Vorthan Empire took the central podium. The Vorthans were ancient, powerful, and utterly convinced of their superiority over younger species. Zixthera's crystalline exoskeleton caught the light as she raised her forearms for silence. Esteemed colleagues, her voice resonated through universal translators, we gather today to discuss the humans' latest petition for full membership status. The way she said humans made it sound like a disease. While we acknowledge their ... enthusiasm for commerce, we must consider the wisdom of granting advanced privileges to such a volatile species. Alina felt her jaw tighten but maintained her diplomatic composure. Captain Marcus Chen, her military liaison, shifted slightly beside her. At 42, Chen had seen enough combat to recognize a threat when he heard one. His weathered face remained neutral, but Alina noticed his hand, unconsciously moving toward his sidearm. The humans have demonstrated impressive growth, continued Zixthera, her multifaceted eyes gleaming with condescension. However, their aggressive nature and primitive military doctrine make them unsuitable for sensitive alliance operations. We propose maintaining their current associate status for another decade while they ... mature. Several delegates nodded agreement. The ethereal collective whispered among themselves in their harmonic language, while the silicon-based architects processed the information through their quantum networks. Alina rose to respond, but Admiral Krelinoth, the Vorthan military commander, was already speaking. If I may add, Krelinoth's voice carried the authority of countless victories. Human military capabilities remain severely limited. Their ships are crude, their weapons simplistic, and their tactical thinking linear. In the unlikely event of conflict, a single Vorthan battle group could neutralize their entire defensive fleet within hours. The chamber fell silent. Alina felt the temperature drop as every eye turned toward the human delegation. This wasn't just diplomacy anymore. This was a direct challenge to humanity's right to exist as equals in the galaxy. Captain Chen stood slowly, his movement deliberate and controlled. Admiral Krelinoth, he said, his voice carrying across the chamber with military precision, I hope you never have to test that theory. Krelinoth's mandibles clicked in what passed for Vorthon laughter. Captain, your bravado is admirable but misplaced. The Vorthan Empire has maintained galactic peace for 3,000 years. We understand warfare in ways your species cannot comprehend. Alina placed a restraining hand on Chen's arm as she saw his muscles tense. This was exactly the kind of incident that could destroy years of diplomatic progress. But before she could speak, an aide rushed into the chamber, his face pale with panic. Emergency transmission from the outer colonies, the aide announced breathlessly. The human colony ship New Horizon has been attacked. All hands ... All hands presumed lost. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs, but Alina felt the world go silent around her. The New Horizon wasn't just any colony ship. It carried the families of Earth's most elite military personnel, including Chun's own wife and daughter. These weren't random civilians. They were the wives, children, and parents of humanity's finest warriors. Chun's face had gone completely white, then flushed red, with barely contained rage. Alina watched in horror as her military liaison transformed from a diplomatic escort into something far more dangerous. His hand moved to his communicator, and she knew with terrible certainty that he was about to make a call that would change everything. Marcus, wait, she whispered urgently. Let me handle this diplomatically. Chen looked at her with eyes that held no mercy. Diplomacy is over, Ambassador. They just declared war on the wrong species. Across the chamber, were studying tactical displays with obvious satisfaction. Unfortunate, he announced to the assembly, but predictable. The vessel was broadcasting on restricted military frequencies and approaching Vorthon territory without proper clearance. We had no choice but to respond with appropriate force. Alina realized with dawning horror what had happened. The Vorthon had seen an opportunity to demonstrate their superiority by destroying what they assumed was a defenseless human vessel. They had no idea that the New Horizon carried the families of Earth's most dangerous soldiers. You attacked a colony ship, Alina said, her voice deadly quiet. A ship full of civilians, women and children. Zixthera's expression showed no remorse. Regrettable collateral damage in the enforcement of galactic security protocols. Perhaps this will teach your species to respect established boundaries. That was the moment everything changed. Alina watched Chen tap his communicator and speak for words that would echo through galactic history. Authorization, Omega. All fleets engage. The response was immediate. Throughout the chamber, similar devices carried by human personnel began to chime with incoming messages. Elena's own diplomatic communicator lit up with priority alerts from Earth Command. As she read the first message, her blood ran cold. Fleet mobilization complete. 7th Fleet departing Sol System. Estimated arrival at Harmony Point in 72 hours. Admiral Harrison sends her regards. Alina looked up to find every alien delegate staring at the humans in confusion. They didn't understand what had just happened. They thought they were dealing with a minor diplomatic incident involving a primitive species with limited military capability. They had no idea that Earth had been preparing for this moment since the day humanity first reached the stars. Chen stepped forward, his transformation from diplomat to warrior now complete. Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed entities, he announced with formal military courtesy, I regret to inform you that as of this moment, the Vorthon Empire has committed an act of war against the Terran Federation. Earth Command has been notified, and appropriate responses are being implemented. Krelanoth's mandibles clicked dismissively. Captain, your posturing is impressive, but ultimately meaningless. The nearest human military vessels are weeks away from this position. By the time they arrive, this incident will be resolved through proper diplomatic channels. Alina felt a cold smile cross her face as she read the next message on her communicator. Admiral, she said sweetly, you might want to check your long-range sensors. The chamber's main display activated, showing the tactical situation around Harmony Point. At first, the screen showed only the expected patrol vessels and merchant traffic. Then, one by one, new contacts began appearing on the edge of the system. The first ship to decloak was massive, easily 3 times the size of the largest Vorthon vessel. Its hull was angular and aggressive, covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays that spoke of serious military intent. Then came another and another, until dozens of human warships materialized from what had appeared to be empty space. Krelanoth stared at the display in growing disbelief. Impossible. Our intelligence reports indicated that humanity possessed no vessels of this size or sophistication. Chun's smile was predatory. Admiral, you made two critical errors in your assessment of human capabilities. First, you assumed that our public fleet represents our total military strength. Second, you attacked the families of the people who designed these ships. The display continued to update as more human vessels appeared. Alina watched alien faces turn pale as they realized the scope of what was happening. The humans hadn't just been building colonies and trade stations for the past decade. They had been constructing the most advanced military fleet the galaxy had ever seen. The New Horizon, Chen continued, his voice now carrying the authority of absolute command, carried the wife and daughter of Fleet Admiral Sarah Harrison, the architect of Earth's deep space defense strategy. It also carried the families of 300 other officers who have spent their careers preparing for exactly this scenario. Zixthera's crystalline features had lost their confident glow. This is impossible. Our scouts reported no major military installations in human space. Alina laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Your scouts reported exactly what we wanted them to see. Did you really think a species that conquered its own planet through warfare would advertise its true military capabilities to potential enemies? The tactical display showed human ships moving into strategic positions around Harmony Point with precision that spoke of extensive planning and preparation. These weren't hastily assembled patrol vessels. These were purpose-built warships designed by minds that understood violence in ways the peaceful Alliance species had forgotten. Chen activated his communicator again. All stations, this is Captain Chen. The Vorthan Empire has committed an unprovoked attack against human civilians. Earth Command has authorized Response Protocol 7. Repeat, Protocol 7 is now in effect. Alina saw several alien delegates exchange worried glances. They didn't know what Protocol 7 meant, but the cold professionalism in Chun's voice suggested it wasn't diplomatic in nature. Admiral Krelanath, Chen continued, turning back to the stunned Vorthon commander. You have 72 hours to surrender the vessels and personnel responsible for the attack on New Horizon. After that time, Earth will consider all military assets to be legitimate targets. The chamber erupted in panicked discussion as delegates realized they were witnessing the beginning of the first major galactic war in over a millennium. But Alina wasn't listening to their debates. She was reading the final message from Earth Command, and what she saw made her heart race with a mixture of pride and terror. The message was simple. Diplomacy has failed. Bring our people home. The fleet will handle the rest. As she looked around the chamber at the faces of beings who had spent years treating humanity as a curiosity, Alina realized that everything was about to change. The galaxy had dismissed humans as primitive and predictable, suitable only for manual labor and simple trade agreements. They were about to learn why that had been a fatal mistake. Asterisk, the reckonings of 1 hours and 37 minutes after the attack on New Horizon, Admiral Krelanath stood on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Dominion, watching his sensor displays with growing unease. The human fleet had maintained its position at the edge of the system, making no aggressive moves but also showing no signs of backing down. Their ships hung in space like silent predators, waiting for something that only they understood. Status. Report, Krelanath demanded, his voice betraying none of the concern that gnawed at his confidence. Human vessels remain in defensive formation, his tactical officer reported. No change in position or energy signatures. However, sir, we are detecting additional contacts arriving hourly. Current count stands at 412 vessels. 412, the number sent a chill through Krelanath's exoskeleton. The combined military forces of the Vorthan Empire numbered fewer than 300 ships, and many of those were scattered across their territory on patrol duties. How had humanity assembled such a massive fleet without detection? The answer came from an unexpected source. On the main display, the image of Fleet Admiral Sarah Harrison appeared. She looked nothing like the diplomatic representatives the galaxy was accustomed to dealing with. Her uniform was crisp and military, her graying hair pulled back in a functional style, and her eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had spent decades preparing for war. Admiral Krelanath Harrison began without preamble. I am Fleet Admiral Sarah Harrison of the Terran Defense Force. You have 23 minutes remaining to comply with our terms. Surrender the vessels and personnel responsible for the attack on New Horizon, or face the consequences. Krelanath drew himself up to his full height, attempting to project the authority that had served him well for over 2 centuries. Admiral Harrison, I do not negotiate with inferior species. Your primitive vessels pose no threat to the might of the Vorthan Empire. Withdraw immediately, or we will demonstrate why we have maintained galactic dominance for 3 millennia. Harrison's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes that made Krelanath's confidence waver. Admiral, you destroyed a ship carrying my daughter. She was 8 years old. Her name was Emma, and she wanted to be a scientist when she grew up. The Admiral paused, and when she continued, her voice carried the weight of absolute determination. You have 22 minutes to surrender. After that, I will demonstrate why humanity spent 50 years preparing for this conversation. The transmission ended, leaving Krelanath staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked, with nervous efficiency, but he could feel their uncertainty. The humans were behaving unlike any species they had ever encountered. There was no posturing, no diplomatic maneuvering, just cold professionalism and an implied threat that felt more real with each passing moment. Sir, his communications officer announced, we are receiving surrender demands from 12 other human vessels. Each one is requesting specific Vorthan personnel be turned over for prosecution. Krelanath realized with growing alarm that the humans weren't making random demands. They had identified exactly which ships and officers had been involved in the attack on New Horizon. Their intelligence capabilities were far more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. Tactical analysis, he ordered. What are we facing? His chief tactical officer, a veteran of hundreds of campaigns, looked up from his displays with confusion. Sir, I cannot provide an accurate assessment. The human vessels are unlike anything in our databases. Their energy signatures suggest power generation capabilities that exceed our theoretical maximums. Their hull configurations indicate advanced materials that our sensors cannot fully analyze. What about their weapons? Unknown, sir. They have not powered up any obvious weapon systems, but their ships are covered with structures that could be anything from communications arrays to mass drivers. Without seeing them in action, I cannot predict their capabilities. Krelanath felt a growing sense of unease. In 3 centuries of military service, he had never faced an enemy whose capabilities were completely unknown. The Vorthan Empire had maintained its dominance through superior technology and overwhelming firepower. Against the humans, both advantages seemed uncertain. "Sir," another officer called out, "long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures throughout human space. It appears they are mobilizing their entire civilization for war." The main display shifted to show a strategic map of known human territory. What Krelinoth saw defied everything the Empire knew about human capabilities. Dozens of star systems showed increased industrial activity. Orbital shipyards were operating at maximum capacity, and energy readings suggested the presence of installations that shouldn't exist. "How is this possible?" he muttered. "Our intelligence indicated that humanity possessed limited industrial capacity and primitive manufacturing techniques." The answer came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez appeared on a secondary communication channel, her diplomatic composure replaced by something far more dangerous. "Admiral Krelinoth," she said, her voice carrying across the bridge with cold authority, "you made the mistake of judging humanity by our public face. For 50 years, we have been preparing for the day when our peaceful intentions would be met with violence. Today is that day." Rodriguez gestured, and the display filled with images that made Krelinoth's blood run cold. Hidden shipyards in asteroid belts, manufacturing complexes built inside planets, and defensive installations that turned entire moons into weapons platforms. The humans hadn't just been building a fleet. They had been constructing a war machine that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. "You attacked the families of our warriors," Rodriguez continued. "Every ship captain, every tactical officer, every weapons specialist who designed our fleet lost someone on New Horizon. You didn't just declare war on humanity, Admiral. You declared war on people who have spent their entire lives learning how to break things and kill enemies." The countdown timer on Krelinoth's display showed 18 minutes remaining. Around him, his officers waited for orders, but for the first time in his career, the Admiral found himself paralyzed by uncertainty. Every tactical manual, every strategic doctrine, every lesson learned in centuries of warfare assumed that he would be facing an enemy whose capabilities were at least partially understood. The humans were completely unknown. "Sir," his weapons officer announced, "the human fleet is moving into attack formation." On the tactical display, the human ships began to spread out in patterns that made no sense according to conventional military doctrine. They moved with precision. That spoke of extensive training and coordination, but their formations were unlike anything in Vorthan tactical databases. "Analysis," Krelinoth demanded. "Unknown, sir. Their deployment pattern suggests they are preparing for multiple simultaneous engagements, but the specific arrangements are completely foreign to our understanding of space combat." Krelinoth watched the humans maneuver and realized with growing horror that he was about to face an enemy that fought by rules he didn't understand. Every advantage the Vorthan Empire had relied upon was neutralized by the simple fact that they had no idea what they were facing. 10 minutes remaining, the communications officer announced. Krelinoth looked around his bridge at officers who had served with distinction for decades. They were professionals who had never known defeat, veterans of campaigns that had secured Vorthan dominance across half the galaxy. Now they looked to him for guidance in a situation that none of their training had prepared them for. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "recommend we consider compliance with human demands. We are facing unknown capabilities with no intelligence support and no strategic doctrine." The suggestion hit Krelinoth like a physical blow. Surrender to an inferior species. Accept defeat without even fighting. Everything in his nature, everything in Vorthan culture, rebelled against such weakness. But as he watched a human fleet complete its deployment, Admiral Krelenov realized that his choices had been reduced to two options: surrender with honor, or be destroyed by an enemy he didn't understand. 5 minutes remaining, came the announcement. On the main display, Admiral Harrison reappeared. Her expression showed no satisfaction, no eagerness for battle, just the cold determination of someone who had accepted a terrible but necessary task. "Admiral Krelenov," she said, "this is your final warning. My daughter's name was Emma. She liked to draw pictures of alien worlds and dream about exploring the galaxy in peace. You took that future away from her and from 3,000 other human families. Surrender now, or learn why humanity has never lost a war we were determined to win." Krelenov closed his multifaceted eyes and made the decision that would save his fleet and change the galaxy forever. "All ships," he announced over the fleet communications network, "stand down and prepare for surrender. The Vorthan Empire yields to the Terran Federation." As his weapons powered down and his shields dropped, Admiral Krelenov wondered if he had just witnessed the end of one galactic age and the beginning of another. The humans had demonstrated something that no species had managed in 3,000 years: the ability to make the Vorthan Empire back down through pure intimidation. As human boarding parties prepared to take custody of the responsible parties, Krelenov realized that the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. They had proven that behind their diplomatic smiles and peaceful intentions lay a capacity for organized violence that made their civilization truly dangerous. The age of human dominance had begun not with a battle, but with the terrifying realization that humanity had been ready for war all along.